Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
All right. So you guys ready? So we're recording on everything here. So you ready to go, Andy?
I think so.
All right. So episode 55, Stomp. Welcome.
55, staying alive.
This is going to be a disaster, I can tell you right now.
This is shaping up to be a very interesting episode.
Yep, it is.
We put this together like over the last 4 hours?
Yeah, and I have to just give a public thank you just because I haven't done anything with the script or planning for this. So, like I said, it should be a disaster. Although, Andy, we've had you on the plans to come back and update us on the hiking pole stuff. So, welcome back.
Yeah, nice to be back. Looking forward to it. Again, there's nothing better than fake research, and that's kind of what this is. Just a great little pilot study to see stuff, and I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
After I figured out all my confusion today, Stomp, but I worked my way around it.
Yeah. Oh, I was so disappointed. We'll get into the data, but when you sent that over, I'm like, how could that be? That goes against everything I've ever studied.
Yeah, it makes no sense, but it turned out
good. That's amazing. So anyway, Mike, have you been abducted or something?
Are you going to take a screenshot of this?
I think I'm going to right now because this is just classic.
So I'm in Florida right now. So I have I'm inside a not even a walk-in closet, like a large closet in my father-in-law's condo in Vero Beach, Florida. And I'm covered in only in Florida can you. It's like I'm covered in that film of sweat mixed with sunblock, and I've been out walking around Fort Lauderdale all day. It's I'm feeling great.
You look like a total creeper. You do. I was going to mention the sweat. You're like a sweaty guy sitting in a closet.
Oh yeah, it's just not good. So. But I'm it's a family vacation to Florida. So, but I didn't want to skip a week. So here we are.
It's fantastic. Hopefully you have some circulation in there, some air movement.
There's nothing. It's getting warmer by the minute. But I'm already just covered in sweat. But I've had family togetherness time, which has been the kids are just every once in a while they'll bring up the podcast. So my oldest daughter gave feedback on the Instagram, and I was like, listen, I don't have anything to do with the Instagram. That's Stomp's world. So So her feedback was that the Instagram page needs to be more mountain pictures and less coffee photos. She's like, it needs to be more aesthetic. So I was like, I'll tell Stomp on the show. I'll give a show. So Caroline,
what kind of?
She wants more mountain photos. I don't know,
like the Mount Everest stuff I post, things like that, maybe, or
no? She just wants more pictures of the White Mountains instead of coffee photos.
Okay, yeah, as long as there's some story behind it, or I just think that there's so many mountain photos on all the social media groups that are out there. It's I don't know, might be redundant.
Pay Corey to send you a bunch of his best shots so that you can post them.
I do try to forward stories from other people that if there's a really brilliant picture that somebody took, I'll definitely post it on the story. But yeah, I will be more mindful of that.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's the feedback. So we'll try to mix it up.
Yeah.
Just looking at the show notes here, and again, Stomp, you put this all together, so thank you. So Andy's back.
You're welcome.
Can talk about the hiking pole survey. Anything else to add on that?
We're going to do that in a separate segment, but just a refresher. Andy was a guest several episodes ago, and the big controversy between use of hiking poles or not to use hiking poles, we're going to sort of dive into that and see what our little just for fun survey dug up for data. So stay tuned.
Okay. Next thing here, big snowstorm hitting. So I'm going to be back we're recording this on a Monday night. I think this show will go out on Friday. I'll be back Friday night, so I was going to go hiking on Saturday or Sunday. There's a snowstorm coming in? When is that hitting? Yeah.
Well, we're getting 5 inches tonight. This is Thornton right here at Welch Dickey. Andy, I think you're a little more south, right?
I am. I think we're supposed to get a little bit, but not much. But my wife and I were up on Cannon yesterday, Easter, and there was beautiful. 8 inches of fresh powder on the top yesterday.
Amazing.
8 inches. Did you have to wear snowshoes, or did you just like?
We every year when the ski area closed, we do an annual event where we hike up. We try to pound up as fast as we can the ski slope, and we bring sleds, and then we sled down the ski area.
Oh, isn't that so much fun?
So we had a blast, but we didn't. You could stomp through it. It was, I mean, as hard as it is to believe, it was light and fluffy. There was some slush deep, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, today Loon was open still, so this was their last weekend open, but today was the Employee Appreciation Day. So the North Peak was closed, but they were skiing halfway up, like the gondola was open, I believe, and then I guess they probably had some celebration inside or whatever, but still a surprising amount of snow in that mountain. It's going.
Yeah, I think they're supposed to get another up high. I think they're supposed to get at least 8. That's what I had heard.
So
overnight.
Awesome.
I keep thinking about doing the Madison Adams hike that I've been talking about for the last 3 months, and I don't know. Maybe I'll stay south.
Why wouldn't you, though?
I don't know. It'll depend on the weather. I'm going to probably go out on Sunday, and if Sunday the weather's nice, I'll probably just go, and I'll just commit to going to Adams, and then depending on how I feel and if the weather's good, maybe I'll go over to Madison. But
yeah,
otherwise, if there's not going to be any views, I'm not going. I'll go somewhere else.
True. Yeah, we'll get to that later. We canceled a couple trips, my wife and I, just because there was just like no visibility. It's been so gray out. Everything's been socked in.
Awesome. All right. Well, next thing here on the list is you've got something about world-class DJs. So as everybody...
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe people don't remember, but the Stomp is a DJ. He's like a jack of... You have so many jobs, Stomp. I can't keep track of everything. But,
yeah, I get bored easy. So I've been, people know I produce and just have dabbled in music forever. But if anybody's interested... 2 DJs are coming next month, James Hype, which is more house music, and then ATB, who's probably the #1 German DJ. He's coming to a waterfront club, apparently. I don't even remember the name, but it's on the waterfront, so keep a lookout. James Hype and ATB, so it's going to be very cool. We're super psyched, my wife and I are going. Concerts are back, which is great. Yeah. And they're accessible, all the mandates and all the other nonsense and masks, and they're not bothering that at the moment, so that makes it a lot easier. So, yeah. All right. So another note here, Eric Todd feedback. If you're asking me, I thought that Eric was great. Got a lot of good feedback from different people that had given shout-outs, said they really enjoyed the episode, so thanks, Eric. And I can't believe how positive that guy is. Like, it's I need to change my outlook. Yeah, absolutely. Super positive and just loving every minute of it. And I think it was really a great episode. And the feedback that I received was really positive too. So thanks for coming in, Eric. Do you think that I don't know if I could be that nice for that long. That's one question I wanted to ask him. What does he ever get upset? Mad? Or mad? What gets you bummed out, man? What is it? It's gotta be
like the grocery store, maybe.
Well, maybe not. I mean, if there's candy in there, he's probably going to go right for the candy aisle and be happy. But who knows? Yeah, laundry? I don't know.
Yeah, something.
There has to be something. Although I don't know this. I don't know. I'm in the family vacation mode right now, so there's a little bit too much family togetherness, but I've been like snapping at the kids. So maybe that's the trick, is you have to have multiple kids to not be nice.
Oh God. Family vacation. I haven't gone on a family vacation for quite some time.
Yeah. It's joyful.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. I think we're going to do a little segment on Florida, but the next one here is, so I guess we're not doing this in the search and rescue news, but AT hiker was found dead. I think we covered this a while ago, but they identified the guy?
Yeah, apparently this is the fellow. They just found the body of this individual on the trail in Georgia, and apparently they discovered that he's a 41-year-old Pennsylvania. Wait a minute. Yeah, Pennsylvania resident Stephen Lucas Ryan. So they had the Georgia Bureau of Investigation down there trying to dig up some information on the man, and they found him on January 21st, 2022, off the Benton McKay Trail on Springer Mountain, which is part of the AT, as we know. And he had some stuff with him, some gear, some light gear, and skull cap and a small black folding shovel and a few other little things. But they finally identified the guy. It really doesn't go into what happened to him, though, in this report, but they have at least identified him. So for all you through hikers.
Yeah, it's pretty quick to identify somebody, because I think when we talked about this originally, I think the way that they found the other guy, I forget his name, but the other AT hiker that they found in Florida, I think that they used that DNA technology where they'll get like your DNA, they put it into the database to get like a fourth or third level connection, and then they'll use genealogy to sort of circle. They'll work their way up the chart on the genealogy to identify potential matches. My guess is that in this case, because it's been relatively quick, that somebody must have got a hit on the missing persons, or a family member reached out, or a friend or something like that would be my guess.
Yeah, possible. Well, we'll keep people updated if anything comes.
Yeah, it is crazy. Did you hear, this probably isn't in your list, but there was another case out in, I think, Utah or California or something like this. A kid, he went missing when he was 16, and they found him in Utah. He was like a homeless guy.
Yeah, for like 5 years, right?
Yeah, he was missing for like 3 or 4 years, and they were able to figure out who he was and reconnect him with his family. So that stuff does happen.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too. I wonder how severe the autism was, if that was part of why he disappeared, or what happened. Really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, all right. So we really want to do this topic, Stomp?
I think so.
This next one? I
think so. What do you think?
All right, well, why don't you start and I'll add.
Well, there's been some talk about the SLASR, what I would call the cat site, and whether or not we should euthanize it, no pun intended. So, whether we ditch it or if we rename it, I don't know, maybe have some listeners give some feedback. I don't know if it's necessarily a positive for the podcast anymore. It seems to have become its own separate beast. So I don't know. What do you think?
Andy, Stomp is being Eric Nice here. So I think and Andy, I don't know. Are you a social media guy, Andy? Do you get involved with Facebook or anything?
I'm an old guy, but I am social media because with teaching in college, I'm around a lot of young kids. So I think I have realized that I didn't. If you would pull up your Facebook page, I don't know if you would even know if it was SLASR. You would assume it was a great cat site, and maybe they talk about hiking every once in a while.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there's a whole history. I mean, and quite honestly, like I'll own my history. Like when I started, the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue page was started sort of as a joke to, and I'll just be honest, like it was started as a joke to sort of poke fun at people asking questions on social media. And I think back at the time I sort of looked at it and I said, like, okay, some of these are stupid questions, let's make fun of people. but I've definitely evolved over time, and I think that, getting to know Stomp and talking to, different people, I've sort of evolved my thinking around the fact that, look, people just are inexperienced, and everybody is on a learning continuum, and we should be working to make sure that we help people. And that's why somebody like Eric is so positive, and it's so impressive to me because we started this Facebook group before we did the podcast, and I think that there was a bunch of people in there that were in there and there was some educational stuff. I legitimately kept the data on the media search and rescue events, and we did, we had a lot of good conversations and good people, but I think there was always an element of people that were sort of there for, not always the most positive reasons. And some of those people are my friends, and it's a difficult thing to deal with. But I think social media over time, and myself, I've also evolved, and I just don't want to deal with nonsense and bullshit anymore. And that particular, it's a Facebook group. It's not associated with the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast page. But my thought is that that group, I'm probably going to just peel it off, maybe rename it, give it to somebody else to deal with, and then all of the stuff that we used to do that was more on the positive side, we'll just push to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast page versus that group. And it's a tricky thing because, I got some friends on there, and, I've definitely gotten some feedback from people that they don't like the direction that the podcast goes, that it's too mainstream, too positive, and it's just too bad. This is the direction we're going in, and
right.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah. Well,
people are.
You should know that I've removed the Facebook link off of the website already, so I'm making moves already.
Yeah.
Sorry, people.
Yeah.
I'll take the heat.
Yeah. And Andy, you must have an interesting perspective being a college professor. I would assume as a professor over the last probably, how long have you been a professor for?
Oh, 25, 24 years.
All right. So you have an amazing perspective, and I think in the early 2010s, they say that sort of the student perspective on things has changed quite a bit. And I think the tolerance for what you could say in a classroom environment without fear of any sort of blowback 15 years ago is significantly different than it is today, I would assume, right?
Yeah, it goes both ways, right? There is words stated in the classroom by professors and students that 15 to 20 years ago would have been traumatic and problematic. And then there is also an increase in intolerance to behavior that X years ago was totally fine and now isn't.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dichotomy, yeah?
Exactly. And I think that's the challenge, is that I've always been very much sort of like Elon Musk is talking about Twitter and evolving it into sort of this free speech a free speech platform much more than it is now. And I've always been sort of that mind, but the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm coming around to the idea that just social media in general, the dynamic, I don't think there's some good that comes of it, but I think that at the end of the day, the extreme ends of social media tend to win out on it. And I think that's the issue with this particular group, is that I don't have the time to monitor it, and I don't want to be in a position where I'm removing and blocking people. And I just think it's probably better to just sort of peel it off and have it be its own thing, not associated with the podcast, and go from there.
Absolutely. And I go back to a new listener. If somebody logs onto our website and clicks on that link and it goes to this absurd freaking cat page, it's just too confusing. It's there's two separate entities at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And for listeners who don't know what Stomp's talking about, basically this page was originally, it was a group that was originally talking about search and rescue, and there was a mix of good and bad stuff in there, and it's evolved over the last probably 9 months, and it's everybody on there just posts cat memes and pictures, which is funny and fun, but it's just sort of moved on. So anyway, so I guess I'll just bite the bullet by Friday, and I'll make the update. And
there's a dead cat on the end of that line.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing in life stays the same, right?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So All right. Anything else, Stomp?
Yeah, we're good, man. Let's move on. We got the tough one out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. So sponsors and coffee talk.
Yeah. Hey, we have a bunch of donations. Chris donated 5, and let's see, Gwen Stratton, one of Steve Mason and Eric Todd Sweet's crew members, donated 5. Thank you, Gwen. That was really cool.
She sounds like the brains behind the operation, by the way, because I notice like whenever Steve and Eric are on, they're always like, they talk about these epic hikes, but it sounds to me like she's the brains of the operation doing the research and the one that's figuring out here's where we're going.
It's possible, because if you read her posts, I mean, she nails it like step by step by step by step. This was the plan, and this is what, went Ari or whatever, So yeah, she may very well be.
I met her on trail with Steve and Eric. I get the vibe she's running the show.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, maybe we
know the deal.
We'll get you in sometime soon to explain yourself. And Seth Casson, this just came in like an hour ago. Thank you, Seth, very much for the kind words, and thanks for listening. He donated 3 coffees, so that's very cool. And of course, we want to say thank you to our sponsor at Rek-lis Brewing, where you'll enjoy the best food, craft beer, and fun just 15 minutes from Franconia Notch, many 4,000 footers in less than 10 minutes from the 5 corners. And Andy, you're associated with Reklis. What's going on at Reklis? Why don't you give a little plug?
I'd love to give a plug.
Yeah.
My wife and I are 2 of the founders, and it's a lot of stuff going on. If you've been in the area, there's a building out back that was a Balance Yoga Studio building owned by a national yoga nonprofit, which is another story for another day.
Yeah.
But Reklis bought that here a little while ago, and all's going according to plan. It's going to open as a tasting room, hopefully. Sometime around Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, wow.
So if you've been there, Stomp, correct?
Yes, yeah, a couple times, yep.
So if you go in, if you want to just come in and have a beer, it can be challenging, right? Because you're taking up a table where someone wants to eat.
Yeah.
So the idea of the tasting room is if you want to just come in and have a beer or 2 and hang out and then hit the road,
Gotcha.
You can. So that's going to be a little live music venue out back if all goes well, and there's a bunch of other stuff. So things are going pretty well.
Excellent. That's wicked cool. Well, that's good. It's the best place around.
Andy, I'm curious, is there any plans, and I know Steve explained this to me previously around the fact that it's a different license to sell outside of the state of New Hampshire. Do you guys,
Right.
are you any plans to expand outside of New Hampshire, or is it just you have to be in New Hampshire?
I think there's plans. The rules are that you can self-distribute in New Hampshire. So we have Jules, who is our head of distribution, and she drives the beer all over the state. For us to distribute outside, we'd have to have a distributor agreement. And as soon as you distribute outside, we don't have the capacity necessarily in the brewery to brew enough beer to also distribute outside the state right now. So that's probably the bigger issue is to be able to distribute outside of New Hampshire, would have to brew a lot more beer than we're potentially brewing right now, I think.
Interesting.
But all the way down in Salem, New Hampshire, you can get it.
Yeah, that's close to me, but I'm just always curious because there's a couple of local places I go close to me in Amesbury, and they seem pretty cool, so it would be one of those things where you could tell them, like, hey, Reklis is now able to ship to Massachusetts, pick some up. They're pretty cool about that stuff, so I'm always curious. But it's a weird thing. So you need to partner with somebody that has a license to sell in Massachusetts?
It's really complicated, but to get it out of New Hampshire, you'd have to have a distribution agreement. So it's either with a distributor, with another brewery, with something that allows that to happen. That's my understanding, at least.
Got it.
And I'm thankfully wildly and distantly removed from all of that. So
it's interesting, though, that you would figure you make it and you could sell it anywhere, but that's not the case. But I'll go to Salem, no problem.
Perfect.
You guys should know I just posted a picture of Mike in his sweaty closet up on Instagram, so you can tell your daughter that instead of a mountain, I put you in the closet up there.
Yeah, exactly. So, it is nice to be in like 80, 85 degree weather and like just
in a closet,
dripping in sweat. But I don't know how they probably look at us and they're like, how do they survive like winter and like it's like months and months of like freezing weather, but I don't know how they survive in the summer here.
Oh my God, it's the dryness up here. It's beautiful. I cannot take the humidity down south. It's brutal.
It's my Achilles heel of New England is the humidity in those 2 weeks in August.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, what's weird too is that I'm used to, like, I'll go out and run and I'll get sweaty and gross, and then it's immediately I got to take a shower and get cleaned up, and then I'm not sweaty and gross. But I feel like in Florida, like, you just have to accept being sweaty and gross because you'd be showering like 3-4 times a day.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome to episode 55 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we are joined by Renaissance man Andy Cannon of Rek-lis Brewing and physical therapy expertise. So, see, he's got multiple jobs just like you do, Stomp.
Right.
So Andy is going to give us a recap of a hiking poll survey that we were able to conduct with participation from the audience. And then later in the show, we will talk a little bit about hiking in Florida, and then we're going to wrap up with some recent search and rescue news. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right. So what are we drinking tonight, gentlemen?
Andy, why don't you start?
Well, I think you guys would figure out what I'd be drinking. I have a Rek-lis IPA called Wicked. It's one of our flagship IPAs, WIKID. It's tasty, a little malty in the front, a little hoppy on the end, and one of my favorites. I had a couple of pints of it this weekend on draft, and it's one of my go-tos.
Nice. What's Ian's IPA that he made? Do you remember the name of that? It's like a triple or a double IPA or something like that.
Oh, the one that just came out?
Well, I don't know. I was there maybe 2 months ago, and it was absolutely delicious. I don't typically like an IPA, but this was really good.
You know what? I think I would have to look. The one that just came out is a triple, which is 11%.
Right up my alley.
Called Dutch Courage.
Yes.
Called Dutch Courage.
One and done.
And it is, yeah, one and done. And it's tasty.
Huh.
So I have to think. I'll think about it. Which one it was that he brewed a couple of months ago. But there are, I'm not a big hop bite guy. I don't like the hop bite, so most of the IPAs there don't have it, so it's tasty.
Excellent. And you, Mike, in your sweaty closet, should we take your temperature quick? Make sure you're not overheating here.
Well, my fan on my computer is going off right now, so it's not super hot, but it's a little toasty. But I'm drinking something called, it's from Crawford Brewing Company, which is down here in Florida, I believe. And it's called Weekend Vibes. So it is a IPA, not bad.
Nice.
It's a little bitter aftertaste, but it's not too bad. So I'm going to go tomorrow. We're driving up to a place called the Villages, and I'm going to try to stop somewhere along the way to get another 4-pack so I can survive the 2 days with my parents and have a few beers.
Oh boy, that's funny. Well, I am drinking a gift from one of my wife's postal patrons, and it's a French Burgundy named Poulet, right? Isn't that cool? So it's just this lovely Chardonnay. It's like fresh honey, white flower aroma with elegant, rich flavors. What can I say, guys? Living the fancy life over here in Thornton.
All right, Andy, you are no longer the Renaissance man. Stomp just took it over with that beverage.
The baton has been passed.
Yes, exactly. All right, so recent hikes. Stomp, where you been?
Oh my goodness. Well, my wife and I have been trying to get out to timber camp several days in a row now, but like I said, it's been socked in, it's been snowing, so we're trying to save it for a day where you can really get a good view into Greeley Notch. And you know what they also call that place is Mad River Notch, because that's the origin of the Mad River, which is amazing. So we've been trying to get up there, but to no avail. So we've just been hitting Smartsbrook and doing the loop and doing the little spurs off of there, like Love Connection and the ledges up by Acteon. Just more or less like fitness hikes just to get out. But I hope to get out on the higher peaks sometime soon.
Awesome. And then, Andy, you talked about Cannon. Have you done anything else recently?
No. My wife and I went up Cannon on Easter, on Sunday. And I went up and sled down. Saturday, we went for a run. We ran Jefferson Notch Road up to Caps of the Ridge, and then ran back down. That was nice. Didn't see a soul, so it was a fun little run.
Yeah, that's nice. That it's very gradual till you hit that bridge where there's that hairpin. Try doing that on a snowmobile.
Well, I can tell you, I was wondering if that was your tequila plastic bottle, the handle that got left on the side of the road, because we saw a lot of leftover alcohol. But
I bet it's a very, very busy route in the winter. That's like a primary corridor.
It was so quiet and peaceful around. It was really nice.
Yeah. Is there any snow or ice on the road, or is it all?
We needed spikes the top, probably the last mile, but other than that, there was dirt. You could weave your way around it. But the last mile or so, we needed it on the way up.
Stomp, we've always like talked about this, but we've never really got around to it. But one of these days, we have to cover that news story about the guy that drove his family up Jefferson Notch. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
Couple 3 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, it's really funny. That happened this year while guiding on snowmobile. It happened 2 or 3 times. One time in particular, it was Mount Clinton Road. This family made it down from the base camp road of the COG, probably 2 to 3 miles in before they got stuck. I mean, It's just crazy. Yeah, it happens quite a bit.
I always thought Mount Clinton was gated, but there wasn't a gate there when we were there the other day.
Yeah, it's only gated from the high point of Crawford Notch, but not from base camp, because snowmobiles go in there during the winter. Yeah. The signs weren't enough, apparently.
I just wonder, like, the people, the engineers that build that mapping software, how they would build in. It's like an interesting problem, like these seasonal roads. Like, how do they know how to program those seasonal roads correctly? Because they have no idea when those gates actually close. So,
are you referring to like the GPS apps you can get for snowmobiles and stuff?
Yeah. Because I think that's what happened, is that the guy put in his GPS and for somehow.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So this is a story that happened 3 years ago. The guy he was in a minivan and he drove up Jefferson Notch when it was like winter and got his family stuck. Like, how do the people that do like Google Maps know to route people away from those seasonal roads like that? Apparently they don't.
No, especially since technically the gates open, right?
Yeah.
But for snowmobiles.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, who knows?
So anyone listening, like, use your, and I hear about these stories out west too, like, just use your common sense. If you feel like you're going down a really deserted road in the middle of the night and you're not familiar with where you're going, like, find something that's paved. Turn around and find something that's paved that you're comfortable with.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story. My daughter came up to visit a couple summers ago, and the GPS, instead of taking them 93 south to exit 28 to go 49 to where we live, it took them up over Tripoli Road. And after, 5 miles, they're starting to get creeped out, and you know how rough it can get on that road. Mm-hmm. But the GPS took them that way, which is sort of ridiculous. That's a terrible way to go. But who knows? I guess it's shorter mileage-wise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But all right, so Andy and Stomp, you guys have gotten out a little bit. I'm getting out this weekend because I've been stuck here in Florida, so I will be itching to get into the mountains. So I'll have a story next episode.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week. Very cool, very cool.
Andy, you came on and you and I had a nice discussion for quite a bit about PT and injury prevention, and we came around to the topic of hiking poles. And for our listeners, it's always a really funny topic because it's a very passionate topic. Some people really swear by them and some people don't. And you and I sort of had an angle as being, as therapists, and our education as to what we've been told about balance systems and how, adaptive devices can actually impede your body's natural ability to do things. So I guess that was the start of this survey. We just wanted to find out if there was any data that we could glean. And Andy was kind enough to put together a brief survey, which we posted on the impossible to find /your show notes. Right? Am I right about that?
Yeah.
And we also posted the videos of the 2 balance tests on Instagram and also provided those in the show notes as well. And if I remember correctly, Andy, why don't you tell us about how you went about putting together the survey and how you chose the balance tests for our listeners?
Yeah, it was really just a simple matter of putting out a Google Forms, and again, we do it all the time for surveys. So I used the Google Forms to create a survey, and we just talked about what we thought was important. We asked how much people hiked. I think it was 0 to 10 times a month. No, a year. 0 to 10 times a year, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, or more than 50. We want to know how old they were. And we wanted to know if they use poles. I mean, very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
And we want to know if they never use poles, if they use poles 75% of the time, but not all the time, 50 to 75, 25 to 50, or never use poles.
Yeah.
And so we just got all that. And I don't know if I mentioned age. We wanted their age. We wanted to put that all together. And then Stomp and I went back and forth a little bit about how to assess balance, and there's lots of ways to assess balance. And what we kind of settled on was this single leg balance test, where you stand on one leg with your eyes open for a maximum of 30 seconds. And there's rules about you can't flap your arms around, you can't hop around, and then the same thing with eyes closed. And people always question about the eyes closed piece, and meaning I'd never hike with my eyes closed. Why do I need to know what my balance is with my eyes closed? Well, a lot of times you're looking at other stuff. You're not necessarily looking with where your balance is, what the horizon is. You're looking here, you're looking there. Can I take a picture? Can I not take a picture? Or sometimes you're looking down too much. So eyes closed was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And so that's the measurements we came up with.
Yeah, and I think we had considered doing what they call the modified CATS, which uses the foam pads, but then it became impractical because most of the listeners probably don't have a foam pad to work with. So it was actually tricky finding a test that was what we call sensitive, because a lot of the listeners are in younger age demographics. So if you give them a typical balance test, they're going to smoke it. So out of all the tests, the single leg stance was probably the most sensitive to what we wanted to try to find, to see if there was a difference in people's balance, whether they use poles or not. So it was a good call, Andy. And before we move on to the data, can you tell us about research that you've done? Now, you do have a background in research, correct?
Yeah, we do. I do a fair amount of work with undergraduates. So what I principally do is my research is based around trying to predict overuse injury in mostly runners. But, we have a couple initiatives going on right now looking at clinical measurements of ankle motion, how to measure hip rotation. One of the respondents talked about using poles because he's had some issues with his hip rotation. And so one of the things I'm looking at is, can we measure everything that in Stomp? You'll get this. Every way we always measure hip rotation is with the leg in the air, not with the leg on the ground, but we always use our legs on the ground. And so we tried to come up with a way to measure hip rotation in weight bearing. And so one of my undergraduates, a young woman named Thru, who's heading off to OT school in the fall, came up with a way to measure it. And so I look at a lot of ways to measure simple things that make more sense functionally than maybe some of the other measures we use.
Gotcha. Now, this was just for fun, but could you tell us what would separate, say, what we did with this, sort of playful survey versus what goes into a real study?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's really kind of sample size, right? This wasn't random, right?
True.
We went out and asked people who had an interest in their opinion on hiking poles to respond. So by definition, it's biased in that respect.
Sure.
And we'd also have to do a study ahead of time to look at power to see how many subjects we would need based on what we're measuring to how much power the study would have. And we didn't do that either.
That's a limitation here based upon the small sample size.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, But what I do a lot with my undergraduates is I kick that all to the curb, and I say, listen, find something you're curious about, take a look at it. Let's not worry about if it means anything or not. Let's go through the process of learning how to collect data, how to come up with a method to analyze data. And will it be valid? Of course not.
Yeah.
It won't be valid, but that's okay. You'll learn something in the process. And then hopefully from there, maybe they go on and meet real researchers who can really kind of give them the education to even get deeper into the content. And that's the idea.
Gotcha. Now, before we get into the data again, let's talk about the reasons on both sides of the equation why poles are used and why they aren't used. I think some of our arguments, or mine anyway, first of all, from a search and rescue perspective, it's very dangerous to have poles. When you're carrying somebody, you have to put them somewhere, and you can actually gouge somebody's eyeball out that's carrying with you. So we try to avoid that unless you can fold them up tightly into your pack. Another reason is, I just really think that it does help your balance. And I think, relying on your legs for the majority of the work is just great. Any other comments on that? Any reasons why you would not use poles?
Yeah, I think the thing that I kind of hang my hat on more than anything else is, our legs are designed to bear weight, and our arms are designed to move. They're not designed to be in contact with the ground. That's how we evolved, right? So I think my big thing is,
and that's equal.
I don't want to use my upper extremities for something they're not necessarily designed to do, which is to contact the ground on a regular basis. I think one of the things that caught my attention, when we talk about the data, I can go into some of the comments. When I asked people if they use the poles, the last thing I said, well, if you use the poles or don't use the poles, why do you or don't you? And it was really interesting to see their responses.
Yeah, let's talk about those. Because you have a list. It's a heck of a list.
I did. I didn't know if you guys could get all that. So I just cut and pasted and sent them all to you. And
yeah, let's check it out.
So I don't know if you remember, Stomp, but when we met, one of the things I came around to at the end of our talk, I said, I think I'm going to start taking poles with me, not to walk with, but as a first aid device.
Sure.
Because I can see a value in having them in my pack, all folded up. And if I need them, I use them. And so I got to tell you, since then, I've hiked with poles. Have I ever taken them out and used them? Nope.
Yeah.
But I put them in my pack. And what was interesting to me is the majority of people, the most common reason for using poles is I want to use them on water crossings.
Absolutely.
And I think, what percentage of my hiking in the Whites involves a water crossing? How many of my total steps are water crossing steps?
Well, here's another question. How many sticks are near water crossings that you could use right there?
Right. So I actually, one of my thoughts was maybe we could start a concession about renting poles at water crossings in the Whites. That might be, I think we'd get in trouble with the federal government.
Well, we'll get in trouble with the leave no trace, but just sort of leave them there as a, as a
take one, leave one.
Use, yeah. I'm not advocating that. Don't come at me, people, but I'm just saying, maybe you could do that.
So, I mean, that's the thing one of the things that caught my attention. The other one was, it helps me, takes the load off my legs coming downhill. And I thought, that's valid. We know that that's true. It unloads your knees a little bit, but every time you unload with as you just said, Stomp, every time you unload with your arms, you're deloading your legs. And part of the process is increasing tolerance in our legs and making them stronger. Right. So are we short-circuiting that system by using poles?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as a pole user, I do wonder, and again, I haven't tested this. I'm more confident in testing it in the summer just because I'm going with a lighter pack. But in the winter, for me, there's a lot of scenarios where I'm shortening those poles, especially when I'm going uphill. I'm less concerned downhill, although it does help too. So uphill, I do like to lean into my poles, and I almost just sort of I push down. I'm not doing the forward. I'm more like just pushing down with my palm on top of the poles to pull myself up. And I think it is because probably my legs are weaker than they should be, and the poles help me when I otherwise would struggle. So I feel more comfortable doing longer distance and steeper distances and then maybe it's mental, maybe it's physical, I don't know. But the same goes, especially when I'm in a heavier pack in the winter. I'm going down steep terrain, it's a momentum check for me. Is I'm using those poles as a momentum check, and my quads are maybe not strong enough to hold myself back with the momentum sometimes in steep scenarios. And also, like, sometimes I'll have a burst of running downhill and I want to be able to stop more quickly, and I can use the poles as a device to do that. So it's not always just about offsetting the fact that my legs aren't strong enough, but sometimes I'm just using them to sort of as brakes.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think what Stomp and I both agree on is that if the decision is I'm going to go hiking with poles or I'm not going to go hiking with poles.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with. But I guess what the comment part of the survey gave me was it made me stop to think a little bit about, I guess what I would encourage people to do is, as much of a pain in the ass as it is to think about, if I'm hiking with poles, if I'm going, if I'm on Franconia Ridge and I'm on a flat undulating route, can I take my poles, pack them up, and put them away? And then when I start going down, take them out and start using them. So I think that if just looking at the comments thing, that's what caught my attention, right? Is maybe it's a good idea to have the poles with you and use them when you need them, but also not use them when you don't need them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm looking at some of these comments now. They do tend to lean that direction. I sometimes use them going downhill to provide some extra support for my ankles, which have been destroyed from basketball. So that's a good example.
Yeah, of course. And again, I think when we look at the data, what we don't know is, is the balance worse because of the poles, or do they use poles because their balance worse? Again, another limitation of our fake research is we don't know really cause and effect in this, but the idea was to have a little fun and see what people thought. And I have to tell you, I did run into one of the respondents at Reklis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was fun having a conversation.
Oh, that's cool.
With Sam, a young woman named Sam, about it.
Huh.
And I did the balance survey, and I tend to use poles, and it's made me think about poles. And I think that's the whole idea, right? Just think about them a little bit.
Yeah. So what did we have here? So we had a total of 22 hikers that responded?
We had a total of 22 hikers that responded, and I think the easiest way to look at it was we looked at it from, we took out the middle categories and we found how many people said they never use poles, how many people say they always use poles, and as it worked out conveniently for us, it was 4 each.
Good.
And so with 4 each, what I did is, interestingly enough, everybody's balance with their eyes open was pretty darn good. There wasn't any real issues there.
Yeah.
With eyes closed, the rubber met the road a little bit. And if we looked at the 4 people, what I did is I took, how many seconds they could stand with their eyes closed on their right leg, added that to how many seconds they could stand on their left leg. So we got a total number of seconds they could stand single-legged with their eyes closed.
Sure.
And compared it across pole users and 100% pole users, never pole users, and we came up with that the people who never used poles, the average, again, average is a relative term when you have a sample size of 4, but the average for that group was they could stand with their eyes closed for 80 seconds, so roughly 40 seconds on a leg.
Yeah.
And the average for the people who use poles always was 26 seconds. So almost 4-to-1 difference that the people who use poles all the time had balance that wasn't as great.
Very, very interesting. So, I mean, given the small sample size, is that enough for you to say, oh, that's definitely worth looking at in a real drawn-up study?
I think that small sample size is not enough for us to say anything.
Okay.
But it piques my curiosity,
Sure.
right? I mean, I looked across, and I don't know if you guys looked at it, but I looked across and I looked at, were the people with the good balance, were they younger? No, not really.
Yeah.
Were they people who hiked a lot more? Not really. So
were they drinking beer at Reklis when they did the test?
Probably. Yeah, maybe not. So I think that, and again, for me, because, I'm as much of a clinician as I am an educator or even a researcher. So I'm lucky that I get to kind of pursue the stuff that's interesting to me. And, if this had come out wishy-washy, I would have said, it's because the study's not that great. It's not a real study. It's kind of fake research. So I'm not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
But when it came out like this, I thought, you know what? I was just telling my wife at dinner tonight, wouldn't it be fun to find a way to do this for real and see if it pans out?
Right. We'll fund you with all our donations.
Yeah. I mean, the balance thing, I guess it makes sense because I think about this, when I'm trail running is the times where I'm not using poles, and everybody who trail runs has this scenario where you're in your zone, you're maybe in a flat section, and you're cruising along, having a good time, thinking about something else, or you're listening to a podcast or music, and then out of nowhere, just you have that twisted ankle that just comes out, and you're like, oh, whoa, I got to check myself, I got to pay attention to my footing. I think the same theory holds when you're hiking and you slip and you sort of check yourself with a pole. If you're not using a pole, then your tolerance for those scenarios is, you should be much more attuned to it. So in theory, your balance should be better because your risk for falling is much higher because you don't have that secondary device to save yourself. So I guess it probably holds that not having poles is going to force you to pay more attention to the steps that you're taking, and over time that would result in better balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the official word that we use all the time when we're training athletes who maybe have sprained an ankle, we talk about perturbation training. We want to perturb their balance, right? We want to challenge their balance. And again, I think that what it comes back to for me is I never carried poles with me ever. I now carry them whenever I hike as a first aid device. And I think I would just encourage people to always have 2 poles with them, but only use them when you need them. If you use them because you want them crossing the river, then put them in your pack until you're crossing the river. Or if you're going to use them because you help your knees downhill, well, then don't use them going uphill. Don't use them on the level. Try to mix it up a little bit. I think that to me is probably kind of the take home of this.
Yeah, and I usually will, I'll pack them the last mile or so. I get to a flattish section, and usually my arms are tired, but after 7, 8, 9, 10 miles, my arms are tired of using the poles, and I will take the time and effort to stash them. And I do think that now that I've got a new backpack, I just bought the Fast Pack. I think it's an Ultimate Fast Pack 20, and it actually has a pretty good setup for storing the poles. You can just attach them to the side strap, and then there's a little strap where you can stick the poles in the end, and they hold really well. That's another thing, I guess, if you are going to stash your poles, you have to get a good pack that is conducive to letting that happen. Or either that, or you just have to get really good at rigging up your backpack so that you can stash your poles quickly. But I'm going to try to do that more often now.
And there are other uses for poles. I mean, you can use them for a makeshift splint. You can use them for shelter, to prop up a tarp. So, I mean, the utility of having at least even one pole is good. But, keep the data in mind.
Yeah, I'm actually talking to a buddy of mine who's a former student who's a orthotist, prosthetist out in Saranac Lakes and does a bunch of hiking in the Adirondacks. And we're talking about, is there a way to make an adaptive attachment to the pole so they can be a makeshift crutch so people can kind of assist themselves out a little bit?
Sure. So
I think there's all sorts of options. And again, it was prior to our discussions, I've never carried hiking poles in my life, hiking. And since our discussion last time, now I do. And I hope I never use them, but I'm going to have them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most poles these days can withstand the weight of your body if you did have, say, a sprained ankle or something like that, or couldn't bear weight. Even one pole. But again, if you didn't have the pole, you could find a stick that's sturdy enough and use it as a single crutch. It'd be a long way out, but at least you'll get out.
Yeah, I've used one once, and it was a stick, and it was a long way out.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. Well, thank you so much for putting the time and effort into this. We will put the information that you've given us, the pie charts and the data that was submitted, in the show notes for Friday. So again, Andy, thank you very much.
Perfect.
And you're going to hang out with us here while we find out why Mike is in a hot, sweaty closet?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to hang out in the hot sweaty closet with him by yourself. So
No, I mean, my audio, hopefully, I've heard that before. Like when we started the podcast, I used to like read advice on how to make your audio better. And they said like the smaller the room, the better. So hopefully my audio sounds good here.
I can't tell. To be honest with you, it sounds a little muffly, but I can never tell until I get your files.
Well, whatever you do with that audio stuff, you'll fix it. But
SLASR's hiking topic of the week.
I'm down in Florida for my father-in-law. So my father-in-law lives in Vero Beach, and then my parents live in this place called the Villages. So we're just on a family vacation. My daughter, actually, she goes to college in Worcester, so we just drove her down to Fort Lauderdale today to drop her off so she can fly back to Worcester. But yeah, we come down to Florida a lot. So, I mean, I think it's pretty likely that I think originally the plan was when we were retired that we would likely come down here for like 6 months and then go back up north for 6 months and do that snowbird thing. But now with work and COVID being a different scenario where I can work remote from home, I think that this timeline may accelerate a little bit. So I may be doing the Florida for 6 months, up north for 6 months situation in the next few years when my youngest daughter graduates high school. But the struggle I have about Florida is that there's no, I mean, as much as people talk about the Florida Trail and all this stuff, like there's stuff around Vero Beach where, there's like a 3-mile loop that you can hike in. And then there's like this, I don't even know what you call it, like a mangrove forest between where my father-in-law is here in Vero and the inlet side of the ocean. So I'll go in there, and it's like, it's not really bushwhacking. There's all these like different like roads that like old pickup trucks can go through and stuff. And I don't even know what this place is like privately owned, or I don't even know what it is. It's like there's all these for sale signs, and I go in there and I'll like hike around or I'll go running, but it's just like trails, and then there's dirt roads, and there's all kinds of like turkey vultures and all this weird stuff, and it smells like a sewer in there, and it's
you don't hear banjo music, do you?
Well, it's got that vibe, but I'm just, I mostly stay in like the actual hiking area. Like there's another hiking preserve like along the ocean, but it is sketchy. Like there's trails where you'll have like, and we talked about this with Cheswick, like there's trails around here that have a foot and a half of like dark water, and you don't know what you're stepping in. And it's just not fun. So I struggle with the idea of being down here for 6 months and being in the flatland. But there is something to be said about the beach. Like I do like the beach, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, on any given day, the odds of nature killing you in New Hampshire is slim.
Yes.
And down there, I think it's greater than slim.
Well, that's what people said, is that like, how do you know if there's an alligator in the water? And I think Cheswick said this. He's like, if there's water, there's alligators. So
there you go. And that dude was just plowing through the water. Like,
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of road walking down here. It's not a great place for hiking. I mean, if you're from Florida and you're listening, like sell us on. I asked this to Cheswick, and I understand the Florida Trail, and I've been on the Florida Trail a little bit. I've gone out there, but it's not. I just don't like not having the payoff of having views. So Florida is tough.
Well, we can't wait till you're back.
Yeah,
Get you out of that flat hellhole.
Yeah, exactly. You know what the high points in Florida are? The trash dumps of landfills.
Yeah. Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that's about all I got to say on Florida, Stomp.
All right, I guess we're moving on. You didn't bump into Ches, huh?
I didn't bump into Ches, no. I think he's out west. But we've got some recent search and rescue news. So you want me to plow through these and you can comment? You guys can comment?
Sure. Let's start off with the old backcountry snowboarder. This is cool. Or not cool, but it's different. It's a different story.
It's interesting. So this, the news story came out on the 18th, but this was from Friday, April 15th. The Fish and Game officers were notified of an emergency distress beacon activated through a Garmin device on Friday, April 15th at 11:10 a.m. The report came in from the International Emergency Response Coordination Center of an injured backcountry snowboarder in the Great Gulf in a ski run known as the Turkey Shoot. So the snowboarder is a 31-year-old man from Pelham, New Hampshire. He was on a solo trip when he fell and tumbled, striking some rocks. He was lucky enough to be around somebody that witnessed it, another solo skier that is 32 years old from Beverly, Mass., who immediately skied down to where this gentleman had fallen. There was no cell phone coverage, so the witness activated his emergency SOS switch on the Garmin device. So I'm assuming the Garmin device must have piped into this emergency response coordination center, and then that sent the message indicating that the original snowboarder had fallen. So he had suffered serious injuries and wasn't unable to walk. So the first skier here that had the device, he happened upon him. He stuck around, and they're in a remote area, the Great Gulf. And,
super remote.
Because of the nature of the injury. Yeah, basically the call was made to have a National Guard helicopter come in. So they flew in with a Black Hawk, and so the SOS came in at 11:10. Black Hawk arrived at 1:17. And they were able to hover the helicopter over the snowboarder, and they lowered a medic directly onto the slope, and then they got him into a litter and hoisted him up.
Right.
So from the time they arrived to the time they got him in the helicopter was about 25 minutes, and then they got the snowboarder to Dartmouth Hitchcock in Lebanon. So not bad. I mean, a lot of lucky scenarios for this dude.
Yeah, no doubt. Very lucky.
It was fast.
And just that quick extraction.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. Now with the Garmin, so that emergency response coordination center, that I'm assuming if you have a Garmin and you have a subscription, then that's where it goes. Or the InReach.
Well, it sounds like the InReach. Yeah. Just the way that story reads. So there's that middleman that you have to contact.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
And I don't know, the Turkey Shoot on the Great Gulf. I mean,
wow.
How do they get to the Great Gulf skiing in the summer? Do they go up Tuckerman and just hike up from that direction, or in the winter?
I'm as Stomp said on the podcast. I think the last podcast. I'm a west side of Washington guy, so I'm not that knowledgeable. But I think they hike in from the base of Great Gulf, or I think they skin or come in from the bottom. I could be wrong.
So they'll go. I mean, that's not a bad. I mean, it's pretty gradual on the Great Gulf, but that's a long way in, though.
I wonder where this shoot is. Is it something that could be accessible from Auto Road or the Osgood side? I mean,
that's what I'm thinking. Is if they came up Tuckerman and then they would have to go almost to the summit and then come around the other side. That would be the other way to get there. But I do know I've run up the Auto Road after Memorial Day, and I've seen people drive up, park near the Great Gulf, and actually ski in end of May and early June down sections of the Great Gulf. But I don't know how they get there in the winter like this, but that's pretty impressive that they were there was people out there, and the guy's lucky that there was a second skier out there.
Absolutely. Yep. No doubt.
And then the next one is another local rescue. So this happened on Friday, April 15th as well. So Fish and Game officers were notified of an injured hiker on the Crawford Path between Pierce and Eisenhower around 4:45. The hiker was a 49-year-old gentleman from Goffstown, New Hampshire. I've seen this name around. I think this guy's a pretty frequent hiker. So he had attempted to summit Mount Eisenhower when he slipped on wet rocks and injured his lower leg. Unable to bear weight, so he called 911, and they had about 30 volunteers from the various volunteer search and rescue organizations, along with 8 conservation officers. Is that, Stomp, is that pretty average for 8 conservation officers to show up, or is that a high number?
That's a pretty decent number. It's maybe a little above average for that area, but that's a great turnout for this. I think initially they may have, been really looking for more help when the first calls came out, but then to have that many people come out under those conditions, and conditions meaning it's, still post-hole terrain up above tree line, and when you're off the side of the litter, post-holing every step, it's a brutal carry. And this person was apparently in the call between Pierce and Eisenhower. So that is a long way out. And according to the story, they got out around midnight. Hats off to all the teams. Amazing work. Heroic.
Yeah. He was 4 miles up, so there's around 30 people that showed up, and I guess they got him set up with a splint, got him into the litter. They do give him a shout out. So if you ever need one of these rescues, people, if you're listening, make sure that if you talk to Fish and Game and you've got everything you need, they gave this guy a shout out. They said he's an experienced hiker who was carrying enough gear and supplies in his pack to be able to spend the night on the ridge if necessary. If you get rescued and you have that stuff in your pack, make sure you tell whoever it is that writes these things up, tell them I was prepared. So
yeah, it's the responding CO that writes up the report.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do me wrong, whoever that is. But yeah, so 4:45. It doesn't say what time. Oh yeah, no, it does say. So they were able to get him around midnight. So that's a long day.
It sure is. And then the hiker went public and posted on Facebook and just said, just had wonderful words to say for the teams and the response. And, it was just a wonderful, Good Friday / Easter weekend occurrence. It's like how amazing that all these people came out and helped me, and just very gracious response by this individual. Yeah.
And it just sounds like it's like we were just talking about, you can be feeling great out there, and then all of a sudden you slip and,
right.
Yeah.
One wrong move and you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you noticed this, but the next 2 stories, Mike, are animal related, and I just find it interesting because this time of the year is the time when the bears come out, and the bears around here are very timid, but there's always that chance that you could get in the way of, say, a cub and a mum, and get yourself in trouble. And that's more or less sort of the basis of these 2 stories. If you want me to cover them, or you, go for it. Okay,
yeah, this is funny. So a hiker in Oregon realized that she was wildly unprepared when confronted with the prospect of having to defend herself against a mother mountain lion after spotting a cub that screamed at her. So I feel like there's not any... I mean, maybe if you have a gun on you, you would be prepared, but otherwise, anybody's going to be wildly unprepared. So Shaylin Stevenson, who posts her adventures on TikTok, was exploring the Bryce Creek trailhead and the scenery of the creek when she heard a muffling scream, and she looked up. She saw the cub. She was probably like, oh, it's a cub. And then she was in shock for 10 minutes when she realized that the mom was probably close by and knew I was there. She wasn't prepared. She had no form of self-defense, so she grabbed a large rock since it was better than not having anything. She then did what you're told never to do. She ran back to her car. Fortunately, the mother cougar did not give chase, And she's got some good footage on here that we'll include on the show notes here. But she never actually saw the mother mountain lion. She just saw the cub. Mm-hmm. And there's, the article goes on
just
to say
assuming.
that like, cougars are stealthy species, rarely seen in the wild, and they're more likely to see you than you to see them.
Yeah.
And there's 6,000 mountain lions in Oregon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah. And the lady, like her last thing, she's like, I got to buy some bear spray. But I don't know. I feel like a mountain lion would be on you so quick that you wouldn't have time to. I guess if you're holding your bear spray in a holster, but.
You know what we should do? We should post this on the SLASR cat page and find out the answer. See, there is a purpose for this damn page.
Yeah, exactly.
One purpose.
But I do when I solo hike though. Like every once in a while, like I'll just get like a. Last year I saw a moose, so that was the first time I saw a moose out in the wild. I saw one on hedgehog. I've seen bears like near the house in Maine, and I've seen them crossing the street a bunch of times, but I've never seen them out hiking. And every once in a while, like I get that vibe, and I've heard noises when I was on Middle Carter one time. I heard a bunch of crashing through the woods, and it was definitely a bear. And then I spotted the tracks right on the trail that were fresh, but I didn't see it at the time. But every once in a while, I've gotten like that vibe that something's in the woods. Matter of fact, when I was in the Belknaps last time, I was sort of thinking to myself, like, okay, I wonder if there's bears around, but I didn't see anything. But I get that like vibe sometimes. But maybe it's just because you get inside your head when you're solo hiking. I don't know. Have you seen a lot of bears in the woods, Stomp?
I have seen one in the woods and multiple on the side of the road, just out in public, just hanging out, looking for dumpsters and things.
What about you, Andy? You ever had any encounters with bear?
Same. I've seen one in the woods, and then in town in Bethlehem, we had a couple kind of cruising around for a lot, looking for an easy place to eat. I'm really happy you brought the story up, though, because my wife and I are going to Oregon this summer for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be paying a little bit more attention than I would have otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are you going near Portland?
We're flying into Portland. We're actually meeting our kids. Our kids live out. One lives in Southern California. The other lives in Denver. We're meeting them in Oregon to go to a track meet that's being held up there, and then we're going to do some hiking after that. So out of Portland, but we haven't really even gotten that far to figure out what we're going to do yet. So we'll do something. Get up the mountains and do something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if anybody's listening from Oregon, they would laugh because it's like the tourist. It's basically the equivalent of like saying go hike Franconia Ridge, but like Multnomah Falls and that whole area in the Columbia River Gorge outside of Portland, like just west of Portland, is like it's just absolutely gorgeous. And there's like a burnt forest out there that's just amazing. It's all behind what's called Multnomah Falls, which is on the Columbia River, and it's just awesome out there. Awesome, like huge trees and like waterfalls. It's amazing.
We'll have the time to check it out. We're cruising around for a couple of weeks before our kids show up. Rented a van, and we're going to just kind of hang around, see what we can find out. So we'll go there. We'll let you know how it looks.
Awesome. So the next story we have here is another mountain lion one. This is in Big
Texas.
Bend National Park in Texas.
Yep.
So some hikers recently had a once-in-a-lifetime encounter with a mountain lion as it tracked its prey, and they caught it on camera. So, yeah, I'll include this in the show notes. So they were on a hike on March 26th along the Pinnacle Trail, and there's a cougar they got on video that had been seen moving slowly on the path as a deer walked in the woods nearby, and they were able to capture this thing just going right after the deer.
But the point of the story is at the last paragraph, and this is why I brought it up. I'll just read it. According to the National Park Service, hikers who encounter a mountain lion should remain calm, okay? Remain calm. Don't panic and avoid approaching or running from the animal. Hikers also should not bend over or crouch, officials said. If the cougar continues to move toward you, quote, do all you can to appear intimidating. I love this. It's like, while you're shitting your pants, try to be intimidating.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the bears. Like, what are you going to do? if you see a bear coming after you, you're gonna panic. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's
Do they ever talk about eye contact? Like, I know, like, I've learned over the years, like, I still get when I do trail running locally, and there's a bunch of like places where people, they go because their dogs can be off leash, or they think their dogs can be off leash because there's not a lot of people. And I've been running in the same areas of Amesbury for years, and I kind of know I've gotten jumped on and I've gotten bit like 3 or 4 times over the years. But like, I definitely changed my approach the last 3 or 4 years, where I spent a lot of time watching like different YouTube videos about dog training, because I want a dog, but my wife won't let me get a dog. So everybody who's listening to the show knows the whole saga about that. But I've sort of learned over the years not to make eye contact with dogs. And even sometimes I'll have scenarios where the dogs are off leash and the owners clearly don't have any recall for the dogs. And the dogs will see me running and they'll come after me. And as nervous as I am about them jumping on me and biting me, like 99 out of 100 times, what ends up happening is if I don't make eye contact with them and I just keep running, the dogs may approach me, but what I found is that they don't know what to do because they're not getting any sort of reaction from me, so they usually just run back to their owner. I wonder if a mountain lion's the same way, or if it doesn't matter.
We should get somebody on that really knows, like, animal behavior, because it is fascinating.
A fish and game guy. Get a fish and game guy on.
Yeah,
or a woman.
That would be fantastic. Let me see if I can do that. But I like your idea, Mike, with bears. Like, just take out all your food and throw it at them.
Well, yeah, the bears.
Distract
I always
them.
have that in the back of my mind. Like, if you did have, I think of the video of the runner guy that, like, the bear just kept coming after them. Like, I think I would just throw my food and hope that they went after that food, and then buy myself some time. But I don't know. Obviously, like, that's a dead bear after you've trained the thing. Like, okay, you're a human and you've given them food. Like, that bear is going to get taken down, and it's going to be your fault for giving them food.
I suppose.
But
yeah,
I'm alive, so that's all that matters.
Either that or always run with a slower person.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah.
Oh, that's twisted.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, now we're moving off to Hawaii. We have 3 from Hawaii, which are really interesting, actually.
Yeah, so let me kick these off. And I'm going to Hawaii next summer. We're going, so this will be good preparation for me.
Yeah.
On what not to do. So hiker dies after plunging 250 feet off a trail. I always think of, when I hear these stories, that someone took a selfie and they just slipped. So visiting hiker died Wednesday after falling about 250 feet off the side of a challenging trail in Oahu.
Olamana Trail.
Olamana Trail.
Yeah.
So the trail is located in Monowela in Honolulu. And 11 a.m., this was a 30-year-old hiker that fell off the side of the trail near the third peak. Rescuers found the hiker and airlifted him to a nearby landing zone, and he died at the scene. Apparently, this was a man. He was hiking with 3 companions, including a local resident, and a fire department spokesperson told Star Advertiser, I guess is the name of the place that wrote the article. His name wasn't immediately released, but they said it's incredibly dangerous once you get past this first peak, wherever they were hiking, and where the gentleman fell is known to be very dangerous, and they've had other fatalities in this area because it's steep terrain, it's narrow, and footing is bad. So I don't see a photo here, but they said that so they interviewed a guy that's part of the Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club, and he said that, like, this third peak section is totally exposed for nearly the entirety of the uphill route. In other words, if you fell 2 steps to your right or 2 steps to your left, you could fall and you may be headed down 100 feet or further before you stopped. And they said at least 5 other people have reportedly died in falls along this popular trail between 2011 and 2019. And this is, again, called the Olamana Trail.
It's a 4.4 mile out and back. Yeah. All trails has it as a hard, strenuous hike, and people are saying you should only do it with ropes. Amazing.
Ooh.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bad. You're going to have to give us a report on that one, Mike, in person, and tell us what it's like.
I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to pass on that one when I get out there. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. It's like 1,500 feet of elevation gain, so it's no joke whatsoever. But I don't know. I'll do some research on it. Maybe I'll go out there.
The picture looks pretty darn steep.
Yeah, it looks nice, but we'll see. All right, so the next one here. So these are all in Hawaii, Stomp. So we'll see.
I know.
Honolulu.
These two stories here have helicopters involved again. It's crazy.
Yep. So April 16th. So Honolulu firefighters rescued a fatigued hiker on the Friendship Trail in you did this on purpose, Stomp. Kaneo this afternoon. The woman who had been hiking alone became exhausted after hiking on the trail for 2 hours. Honolulu Fire Department received a distress call just before 2, and rescue personnel who walked up the trail made contact with her around 2:30. She didn't report any injuries or medical issues.
Is this the one where she was hiking for 2 hours and then gassed out?
Yeah, and then
and got a helicopter.
They extracted her at 2:40.
Right. It's incredible. I don't know what Hawaii's thinking, but I don't know. They must have a very unique search and rescue structure there to fund all these helicopter rides for tired hikers.
Well, I think helicopters are like a big thing for tourists, so it could be that they might have some extra helicopters like floating around.
That's really interesting.
All right, and then this last one is again from Hawaii. So fire crews helped a man in his 60s after he became ill well near the first pillbox. I don't know what that means. He was unable to get down the trail with the help of his hiking partners.
It's a military pillbox from WW2.
Okay, got it. So apparently they were able to identify this guy. They airlifted him off. He got to the Lanikai Park landing zone and was evaluated. His hiking partners were walked off the trail by additional crew members, and that's about the extent of this one. So 60 years old, he got tired and got a helicopter ride.
We have to get to the root of this.
A lot of people getting tired in Hawaii.
Yeah, I guess it's a pretty quick trigger for them to get a helicopter ride compared to New Hampshire.
Yeah, just being tired.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we got 2 in New Hampshire locally. I think that this is the beginning of what will likely be. I think May you'll probably see anywhere from 10 to 20 rescues, and then June, July, August, September will be
weekly.
Again, anywhere from 10 to 15 of these rescues a month will show up, maybe even more.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get ready.
Exactly. So Stomp, that's it for the show here. It's going to be a short one, but I think the only other thing I had on my notes was that we did get a couple of reviews on Apple. So if you want to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, feel free to do so. But we got 2 new reviews, one good and then one bad.
Let's check them out. Do you have them with you?
I don't. I think one of them basically just said that it was a great show and they loved it. And then the other one was, and I tell people this, so if you ever want to start a podcast, my advice to you is to make like 10 or 15 episodes and then throw them away. And then
pretty much
the 16th episode should be your first episode, because so I think that this guy started from the beginning, and I think that a lot of those shows are garbage, but he basically said he's mean to me, Stomp.
How could anybody be mean to you?
He doesn't even know you're in a closet.
I know.
Yeah. Who would put somebody in a closet?
I don't know. But the guy said that I was like talking over you or something, which I don't know. I'm sorry, Stomp. I publicly apologize.
Yeah, hey, whatever. It might have been my pathetic internet connection back then too, so the old delay. I forgive you anyway, if it happened.
Exactly. But so leave a 5-star review if you want. If not, then if you don't want to leave a 5-star review, don't leave any review.
Right.
It'll shatter our egos.
Well, safe travels. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, and get out of that damn closet. You're going to pass out on us. And Andy,
and I appreciate you guys, your patience, because it's a crazy week.
Oh, no worries at all. Yeah. Andy, thanks for putting the time into that research and whatnot, and it was really informative nonetheless with all the other discussions surrounding it. So thank you, and we'll see you up at Reklis at one of these times.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see you guys there. As I said, everybody, first one's on me when you get there. So
perfect.
That's a deal.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Only one hill! Here's Lieutenant James Neeland of New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.